to admit Tanya Janca. Tanya is a real pro. When there you are. I love your outfit.
Oh, thank you.
That is
Thank
a
you.
that leopard print takes a lot of confidence to wear and you pull it off.
Thank you.
Tanya is an old pro when it comes to giving cybersecurity talks. I swear she gives like, correct me if I'm wrong, like 6 or 7 a year at least.
Oh no, like more like close to 50 to 100. Like last year I gave a few per day at like some conferences. I'd give two or three in the same day at conferences. Yeah.
So this is like sleeping or breathing to you.
It's more like it's that fun thing I get to do that I do often.
That that's
I love I, I love presenting.
You're really great at it. When I was covering Sector 2019, I really
Mhm.
enjoyed covering your talk.
Thank you.
Um, Tanya Janca has a new business called She Hacks Purple. Her website is at shehackspurple.dev, and she has some really awesome application security courses that you can enjoy online at your leisure. And I've got a special deal for Disinfosec attendees, whether you are using Twitch or YouTube right now. Two of you are going to win free AppSec courses. So I'm going to ask a trivia question, and those of you who answer the question correctly in chat will win. So is everyone ready? So my question is, in the context of application development, what does IDE stand for? First couple of correct responses wins a free application security course.
Yes.
So, you know what? I'm going to get you to start your talk.
Okay.
And
And you'll tell me the winners at the end?
yeah, and those are going to be two very lucky winners. So we'll see how that goes. I am going to enjoy your talk right now. If I'm not at my computer, I'm still listening to you, believe me. So I'm going
Oh
to
yeah,
change
I know.
from a speak. There we go. So we got the focus on you now. You're on.
Okay, so I am sharing my screen. So you should see, and then I'm going to start my presentation, start from start. So can you see my slides? They look good? I'm going to assume they look good. Hi everyone, I am Tanya Janca, and welcome to my talk. It is called Purple is the New Black: Modern Approaches to Application Security. So so I have slides that I'm showing you, but you don't need the slides to understand what's happening in this talk. So if you're visually impaired, you're just missing mostly cute pictures and then a lot of text on screen. But I'm going to describe everything so that you're not left behind. I also want to thank Kim for having this conference because it's really amazing that she is building a platform for people who are not fully abled, but who still want to give back and teach and show that we are still able to contribute a lot. So I'm dyslexic, which is considered learning disabled. I like to think I just learn really differently. Um, and so that is why I'm here at this conference. Okay, so let's talk about modern approaches to securing software. Okay, so I like to tell you what I'm going to tell you and then tell you and then summarize again to tell you what I told you. So what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about red team, which is offensive security. It's offensive. It's not offensive like swear words. It's offensive like the people in hockey that are at the front line are offense, while the people protecting the goal are defense. We're also going to talk about blue team, which are defenders. They are defensive security. I'm going to explain what all of these are. I just want to tell you what I'm telling you. We're also mostly going to talk about purple team. So this is why I'm called She Hacks Purple. because I do blue and red activities. And I like to call it collaborative security. We're kind of like the bridge in between the security team and the developers. We're the bridge between blue and red. We are the people that cooperate and make things happen. We do a lot of compromise, a lot of negotiating when you are a purple teamer. Okay, we're also going to talk about how a lot of people see hackers. So on the screen, I basically have a picture of a guy in a hoodie that's black, and he just looks like he's up to no good, essentially. So this is what a lot of people see when they see us. They think of criminals, they think dangerous, they think badasses. But that's not what I see. What I see, so now you can see like the purple teamer high-fiving a robot, and I see us protecting and helping others. That's the way I see InfoSec professionals. I personally feel the work we do is extremely noble. I feel like, yeah, like we protect and aid others. So every single conference, you have this about me slide. And the reason that we have a slide where we tell you about the speaker is because we're trying to show you we are indeed qualified to give our own talk. I didn't used to understand when I first started speaking. I'm like, who gives a crap about me? I just want to show them my cool research. And they're like, no, you need to kind of convince them that you're cool. So I'm Tanya Janca, and I enjoy punk rock. So I have a picture of me holding a beer at a Measure Rock Festival that's in Montebello, Quebec every year. So I didn't, well, this year it's off, but I've been every year for a long time. I am known as She Acts Purple. Some of my hair is purple. I don't know if you can see it. I just trimmed it, so a lot of the purple came off because the hairdresser opened, and that was awesome. On Twitter, on YouTube, on Twitch, on every single platform, if you want to find me, just look up She Hacks Purple. I am a purple teamer, as I mentioned previously. I did not try to pick that as my career. I thought I wanted to be a pen tester, but then I just kept hanging out with developers and helping them fix things. And then I found out that that was a job. And then I've been doing that ever since. I'm totally obsessed with OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project. I have a chapter in my city. I'm part of the DevSlop OWASP project. I love that community. I'm one of the founders of WOSEC, Women of Security. I love that community. So if you're a woman and you want to meet lots and lots of other women that work in security, this is an awesome way to do it. Or if you're interested in security or joining security, if you're a woman, just come check us out. We definitely want to meet you and make new friends. And I started my own company, and it's called sheactspurple.dev, and we teach people about securing software. Okay, so hopefully you're like, Tanya's really qualified. Let's do this talk. Okay, so there are going to be 4 parts in this talk. The first one is we are going to talk about collaboration, empathy, and advocacy. Yeah, that's right. You need soft skills if you want to be good at AppSec. So I have actually, I've told a lot of people this, but if you're not good at empathy, if you can't compromise, if you can't negotiate, you're not going to be great at AppSec. These are skills that you need to have to be good at this job. The next one is the longest part of the talk, and this is security tactics for modern types of software, so like serverless, logic apps. What is Kubernetes? So I'm going to briefly touch on several types of new technologies, and then I'm going to tell you like the main important best practices in securing them. It's going to be a lot of information, and I apologize if your brain melts just a bit, but I just kept wanting to cover more and more and more. So, okay, and then the next one, briefly, we'll talk about automating boring stuff. So I learned to code so I would never have to do anything twice because coding's awesome. I'm just like, do my bidding, computer, I'll be back later. I'm getting coffee. And then I'm going to talk about continuous learning. So that's what you're doing right now by attending Disinfosec. This is you continuing to learn being more and more awesome, and then making yourself more and more valuable, like to your employer, to the community, to yourself. Okay, awesome. Let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to give you just a couple definitions because I never know where my audience is at. So I never know if you already know lots of this or some of this is new. So I'm going to go as though you don't know these things. So if you already know, it'll be like 2 or 3 minutes. So run to the other room, get a coffee, come back, or maybe it's later wherever you are. I am on the West Coast of Canada. Kim and I are both Canadian. I don't know if you know, if you can tell by our awesome accents. So if at the end of the sentence I say a, that means that sentence was a question and I expect you to respond positively. So like, did you like my talk, eh? My talk was good, eh? Yeah. I'm out and about. So if you can't understand me or I say an expression and you don't get it, it's probably because I'm Canadian. Kim will probably laugh, but like, please ask in the chat questions so I can help clarify my Canadianness. Okay, so what is AppSec? So AppSec, or application security, is every single thing that you do to ensure your software is secure. So that can be hiring a pen tester to come in and smash your app and tell you all the things they found wrong. That can be adding a scanning tool to your software development pipeline to look for vulnerable components. It could be fixing a whole bunch of security bugs. All of those things are part of AppSec. And if you're doing them, you are fighting the good fight. Who said that? I said that. Yes, I quote myself in my own talk. So what is DevSecOps? So I get asked this all the time, so I thought I would cover it. So my friend Imran taught me this, and he said, Tanya, it's what we've always done. It's just application security, but adjusted for DevOps environments. We still want the same things. We just have to kind of do different tactics, use different tools, so we can still make sure they're making secure software. That's all. He makes it sound so easy. He's really smart. If you don't follow Imran, maybe you should. So then what is a red team besides, getting to wear awesome red clothes? I love red. Kim, I almost wore a fire engine red dress. It was a toss up this morning. It was hard. So what is red team? So they are attackers and they do offensive security. Not offensive like they swear at people, but offensive as in they attack things, they test limits. It's adversarial in style, and it's quite often against production systems. So once you think your stuff is really tough, then you want to have people testing the resilience, that you want to have them test every boundary as much as you can, because having someone that you pay to test that, who will tell you what's wrong and what they find, versus having malicious actors test it, is much better. They find real risks. It is not a paper exercise, so it's quite technical in nature. So if someone's writing exploits, if someone is doing penetration testing, those types of things are all part of the red team side of security. So what is blue team? They are our defenders and our protectors. They are the people that ensure we have defenses and that they are set up properly and they work. They do monitoring, logging, patching, fixing bugs, like using tools to shield us from abuse. That's what they do. They protect our systems and quite often our customers and our employees. So, but this talks about purple, right? So let's talk about purple. So purple, I'm going to include in purple collaboration, empathy, and advocacy. So we are at step 1 of our 4 steps throughout this talk. So what is purple team? So some people say it's blue team and red team. And I kind of agree. Kind of that. You kind of do both. I like to think that we are the collaborators, the cooperators, and the communicators. We are the bridge. We teach people, we help people, we provide tools, we enable dev and sometimes ops to get their jobs done securely, right? Like that's what our security team at every company is supposed to do. We are supposed to make sure everyone else is safe and what they're doing is secure. That's it. I make it sound easy, right? So I like to call us the bridge between security and software developers. Like we're right here in the middle. I'm like putting my hands together and like right where my two fingers touch, where my hands come together, that's where the purple team lives, helping both sides. So I like to think that purple team is application security as a whole. It encompasses red and blue, and it overlaps. And all of that is application security. You can't just do one side and say that you're securing your software. You must make sure you have defenses and you must actually test them. Okay, so what do we do if we are a purple teamer? Well, we talk to developers all day long. They are our besties. We give them guidance, we give them assistance, enablement. So sometimes that means we're going to buy them a tool. Sometimes it means we show them how to use their tool. Sometimes it means we go and we like kind of adjust things so the tool actually works a lot better. So like sometimes this means we pay for things out of our budget instead of theirs. Sometimes it means we actually write our own tools. It is rare that you are in a situation where you need to do that, but sometimes you just actually need to build your own stuff because it's so custom what you're doing. We write documentation that actually makes sense that people can actually read and then use. So you know, like how there'll be like a 25-page policy on stuff. So maybe we have to write that for the policy team, but then we write a summary that says, yo, you need to log this stuff. You need to not log that stuff. And I expect you to put the logs here. And we advocate. So I'm going to talk about what advocacy is in a bit, but we have to advocate for security and developers. So we're like right in the middle between the two. We have to advocate for both sides. So we can't just advocate for developers. We can't just advocate for security. We must be able to compromise and negotiate between the two. Okay, purple team is a modern application security approach. We used to have two separate silos, and the security team mostly just said no to the developers. We were a giant gate they couldn't get by. We're doing things in a new way, and the new way is called purple team. So what do I mean by advocacy? Right? Like, what am I talking about? Okay, so the technical definition from Wikipedia, which I will read to you now, is public support or recommendation of a cause or a policy. Yeah, so we are very publicly, as application security professionals, we are showing support and recommendation of security policies to developers and of what the developers need to the rest of the security team. That is literally a really, really big part of your whole job if you work in AppSec. Okay, so I want to talk about how we can succeed at being good advocates. Last year and the year before, I worked at Microsoft, and I was an advocate for security within Azure. And I followed a bunch of these whenever I could, and I got really good results, but I did not make them up. Okay, so principles for success. So the first one, you may have heard people from, so there's this blog I read called Hella Secure, and they talk about this a lot. And my friend Nancy Garishe of the DevSlop project, she talks about this a lot. Self-service. Don't make people wait on you. There's never enough security people. There's never enough AppSec people. Whenever you can, let people service themselves with your stuff. So you have like a wiki, let's say, and then you have all the stuff there, and you make sure that everyone has a link, and then you just put everything there so they don't have to call you and email you and bother you and say, where's that document again? Same self-service in anything, in any tool, in licensing, and whatever you can enable them to not have to go through you, because then you are a bottleneck. And not only does your job suck, because that's boring, their job sucks because you have not made it self-service. Confidentiality. So, I mean, if a developer comes to you and they explain they've been embezzling money from the company, I don't mean that you should make that confidential. However, if a software developer comes to you and says, like, I've made this mistake, I'm super embarrassed, can you help me fix it? That should be confidential. Like, you don't run and tell all their peers, like, yeah, that guy sucks at coding. They need to know they can come to us and trust us, and that unless it's something where we must share, that we will help them save face, that we will respect their privacy as an employee. Human-centered approach. So a lot of people forget about this one. So I don't know if you know, but software developers are actually just human beings, same with security people. And sometimes we will plan things out forgetting, I don't know, they need sleep, water, and food. Like giving them pen test results the night before they're supposed to go live on a new product means them staying up all night. And that's not human-centered, right? So planning things out, remembering people need breaks, trying to ensure that we don't burn people out. This is really important. Empowerment. So this means give people tools, give them processes that work, that are efficient, listen to their feedback and update things so that it's empowering and not disabling, right? Like if you create a process where they have to get things approved 21 times before they can do a simple task, you've like disabled the person from completing their work, right? Like you've put all these roadblocks in front of them. You want to be the opposite of that. Equal opportunity. Everyone needs to have access to security. I've worked at a lot of places where only the super senior people are allowed to use security tools and learn about security and have access to the knowledge, etc. And I feel that's wrong. If there's a super junior person, but they're very excited, I still want them to learn, right? Because that is the person that maybe one day is going to be on my team, or that's the person that's going to spot a thing everyone else missed. I believe that everyone needs to have opportunity. Accountability on both sides. So the security team and the software developers. So for instance, if we are complaining the software developers are not fixing things within the service level agreement we signed with them, that means we have to also be meeting our service level agreement with them. So we can't then ignore their emails and never respond, right? It goes both ways. And by holding yourself accountable, you will do better for them. Accessibility, which is definitely what this conference is about. It's really, really important that whenever possible, when you share things, you make them as accessible as possible. So let's say you're going to buy books for everyone, ask if anyone would prefer an audiobook, or ask if, like when you're providing training, like, is it better for you to do the training from home or from work, or like to go to a conference? Like, not everyone learns the same way. I could tell you this is very true. And so if you just give training or knowledge in only one way, that means there's a bunch of people where it might not work very well for them, and then you've lost them. So holding that as one of your values when you are making your systems will give you better results. Empathy. Turns out soft skills are life skills, just that some people don't seem to think they need them. You will be awful at AppSec if you have zero empathy, if you cannot see things from the other person's viewpoint, if you can only see what matters to you and you can't hold value in what matters to other people, then you should not be an application security professional. Instead, you should choose a different part of InfoSec where not so many soft skills are required. You require a lot of soft skills to work in AppSec. You have to be able to write awesome reports. You have to be able to interpret and read reports and stuff from various tools. You have to be able to explain highly complex concepts and topics to other people who don't know them yet. And if you make them feel little, if you make them feel embarrassed, if you make them feel crappy about themselves or like you don't respect them, no one's going to want to work with you. So this is really, really important as a job skill. Whenever people say like, oh, technical skills are the only thing that is important. Yeah, maybe for other jobs, but not for this job. Okay, so I want to talk about idols. So this is a bit of a rant, but I think we're obsessed with hackers. Like we see everywhere, all over the place in the media, all these movies, idolizing them as though they're super amazing, they're superhuman. Of course, they can break into the NSA in under a minute. That's not true. And like, I think that we as a society are obsessed with the idea that hackers and specifically Red Team is really, really cool. Because I assure you that there are not as many movies about accountants as there are about hackers. And like we as a society keep idolizing this only one job within information security, and it has people so biased. Like if you look at all the training offerings, it's ridiculous how many pen tester trainings there are compared to AppSec trainings, compared to defense trainings. It's ridiculous. There's not that many jobs. Like, why are we so obsessed? And I think it has to do with media and the movies. And on top of that, it's resulting in these budgets for security teams that don't add up. You can't pen test an app into being secure. I have seen so many companies where their entire security budget for software is just hiring a pen tester. They don't have time, even in the budget, to fix the things they found. No, you're wasting your money. Stop doing that. Okay. So it's just like a little ranty, maybe a lot. I also feel that our idolization of hackers is harming our industry. I feel so like when I joined information security, like I used to play music professionally, and I was in a band, and then I met this other guy and he was in a band, but he was also a pen tester. And so my introduction was very different than what you see in the media. And then I joined OWASP, and like everyone there was just like hugs and friendly and high fives. And so my introduction was like, oh, it's like all these cool, nice guys. But like if I had seen, for instance, the TV show Mr. Robot, I would be like, I don't belong in that industry now. And I feel like we're scaring a lot of potential people away from our industry with this like weird image and subculture thing that has nothing to do with programming. You do not like, I love hoodies because I live in Canada and it gets cold sometimes, but you don't need to own any hoodies to be an awesome hacker. Like, look at me, I'm wearing a cute leopard print dress and I can still definitely do SQL injection. Okay, so it doesn't matter like what you wear or like, yeah, exactly. And I find this a problem, and I'm seeing it in so many different ways. So as an example, I run this hashtag every Monday, and I encourage all of you to participate in this. So it's on Twitter, and it's called Cyber Mentoring Monday, and it's all one word with the hashtag # in front of it. And I try to pair people with professional mentors. And the first 6 or 8 months that I did it, 100% of people, 100% wanted to be mentored to be a pen tester. And only over me like sharing so many new things and sharing like, but what if you did incident response? What if you did digital forensics? What if you did, application security? What if you, just like we're an awesome secure coder? You know what I mean? And so now it's branched out into all these different areas, which is wonderful. And I'm really happy, but it took months and months and months to change. And it's because everyone thinks that it's the be all and end all of security. It is an important job. It is not the only important job. Okay, so now we are on to the big part of the talk. Modern application security tactics. So what the Purple team does, things that they need to do to secure modern software. So the first things I'm going to talk about are zero trust and assume breach. So zero trust is an ideology and a design pattern. So what we used to do is we just protected the perimeter. We had giant firewalls and no one was allowed in. And if you were in, then we just trusted you and assumed you were awesome. This led to a lot of insider threats, a lot of stolen intellectual property, Sometimes malicious actors would manage to get past the firewall, and then it was like a kid in a candy shop stealing all your stuff. So we came up with zero breach. And the idea is that, or sorry, zero trust. And the idea is that no one trusts anyone. So let's say you have an app and it talks to a database. That database should only ever be open to that app's API. That one port that it talks to it can be open, and then it still needs to authenticate. And everything else, the database says, no, go away, thank you very much, and then reports on it to the SIM so that the security operations center people can go check on who's trying to talk to your database that should not be. So we can apply zero trust within our applications, between our applications, and that includes APIs, with our configurations, and especially with our network and or cloud security designs. It's awesome. Trust me, it's so much better than the way we used to do things. We used to do zones. Zones are dead. Okay, so the other way that we help with our designs, etc., is assume breach. So this is when you do things, you assume that a breach has already happened. So you design things in that way, like processes and systems. So a really good example of this is if you're running a bug bounty program and someone reports a vulnerability to you and you realize it is a vulnerability, you immediately kick off your incident response process to go check to see if someone has already used this vulnerability against you. If a security researcher found it and reported it to you, they might be the 7th person who found it, not the first. So by assuming breach, you go and you check, and most of the time you're fine. But those couple of times when you realize, oh, there's someone living on my network and they have been for a long time because of that, is definitely worth you having assumed a breach. Next, serverless and logic apps. I'm just going to take a sip of water, and by water I mean caffeinated beverage.
That's okay. I'm on my 3rd can of Rockstar today, Tanya.
Yes. Yeah, I'm drinking Diet Coke as of this year, and I feel like I've officially become middle-aged. Okay, cool. Okay, so serverless and logic apps. So logic apps are triggers. So they are triggered by something that happens in your cloud environment, or you can call the trigger. But basically, something happens. So let's say someone tries to log in for the 100th time to your app, and the logic app triggers. All logic apps do is call a serverless app. They just boot it up. That's it. Serverless apps are little tiny apps, scripts sometimes, and basically they run without a server. Basically, usually an app lives on a server and it runs 100% of the time. Serverless apps aren't running. They're not on your network. They're doing nothing. And when they are triggered, what happens is they explode a container, they run themselves to completion, then they self-destruct, releasing all of those resources back into your ecosystem. And this means that you could have a serverless app that, let's say it runs for 1 minute and it runs 9 times a month. So you're paying 9 minutes of cloud time instead of however many minutes per month there are of cloud time. That can save you so much money. It also means you have a much smaller attack surface because there's only 9 minutes per month where it exists and therefore could be attacked. Both of those are awesome. Saving money, awesome. Reducing threat surface or reducing attack surface, awesome. Okay, so how do we secure logic apps, which are triggers, and serverless apps, which are just apps that only run for a few minutes at a time? First of all, you need to follow all the same AppSec best practices that you would usually follow. Yeah, you can't stop doing it just because it's new tech. So if you learn one thing, if you learn 2 things from this entire talk, one of the things is don't be mean to software developers. That is going to get you nowhere. And the other thing, the second thing, is that when you do new tech, don't forget all the best practices you already know. almost all of them will always apply. Don't forget. Don't get so excited about the new tech that you forget yourself. Okay, so what are best practices that are old that you should already know from serverless? So monitor and log those functions. Yeah, you still have to monitor, you still have to log, and you still should not log personal information. 2, use all the same secure coding conventions that you would do. So validate your inputs. Secure and verify your data in transit and at rest. These are things that you should definitely already do. But let's talk about new stuff, because that's what this talks about, cool new stuff. If you're going to use serverless, you can use an API gateway as a security buffer. So it'll handle authentication and authorization for you. That means you don't have to code it, and that's awesome. It can also ensure, it can stop brute force attacks as well. Not only should you monitor and log your functions, but a new trend I'm seeing that I really, really like is that those logs are being fed into a SIM, a security information and event system for the people in the security operations center to see what's happening. Oh my gosh, look at the serverless app. It looks like people are attacking it. What's going on? I'm getting all these alerts. Yeah, please go check that out. Manage your secrets in a secret store. So this is a newer thing that people are doing. It doesn't specifically have to do with serverless and logic apps. It has to do with every single app. If there's a secret, by that I mean credentials, passwords, connection strings, hashes, certificate, all those things. Those should be in a secret store, which is a way where computers talk to other computers to share the secrets, and human beings are no longer involved. If human beings aren't involved, that means you can't have an insider threat steal those secrets. Deploy functions in minimal granularity. So I took this from the Sneak site. Thanks, guys. But what they mean by this is if you have a serverless app and it calls another serverless app, I don't know why, but people forget that they still, minimal granularity. Serverless apps should just do one thing. That's what this means. Sorry, it's this one. Maintain isolated function parameters. So if you have one serverless app and another serverless app and a third serverless app, you still need to have authentication from the first one to the second one, authentication and authorization to the third one. You can't just pass things back and forth and assume trust. You can never assume trust. For some reason, people are like, oh, this app's calling this server, this big app is calling this serverless app. We're going to do security in between there and there. But then you have a serverless app call another one. And it's like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. It's not fine. Okay, thank you. Okay, next one. Third-party component and library management. Oh, good. I'm getting a reminder. Awesome. Ignore that. It's probably telling me to come here. When you build software, somewhere between 80 and 60% of your code that it gets compiled down into your application is code you and your team did not write. It is libraries, it is cool plugins, it's frameworks, it's scripts that you're allowing from another site for whatever reason. All of that is code you didn't write, but you still accept the risk for. So if you have a really old version of a framework that you're using and it has known vulnerabilities, that could be bad news bears for you. So whether these components are open source or proprietary, so for instance, the .NET framework is proprietary, I still want to know if it's secure, if I'm using a good version or a bad version. So you still accept the risk. I suggest, if you can afford it, to use multiple tools to test to see if your components are secure or not. So what they do is each different company has a bunch of security researchers that look at these things. So there's the exploit or the vulnerability database, there's the CVE database, there's all these different places where they can get lists of things that are known to be vulnerable. But then these more advanced companies have their own security researchers that are also checking on their own and coming up with new lists. So They all find these answers in different ways. So if you can afford 2 tools to check, that's even better than 1. I think you should scan your repository every single week, the whole thing. It's really fast and the code's just sitting there. You might as well take advantage of it. And I also think that if you use a DevOps pipeline or a CI/CD, same thing, you should be scanning for if there are vulnerabilities in your third-party components there as well. Because you might add a new component or upgrade something, and sometimes the newer version is the one that has the vulnerability. It happens. Online storage, your crown jewels. Online storage holds the keys to so many things. It has all your data and you need to protect it. So how do we protect online storage? I'm a big fan of templates. Don't make people make decisions or have to think if they don't need to. So if you create a template that's totally locked down for your org, and then everyone just gets copies of that template, that means by default, they're secure, right? When I worked at Microsoft, I remember I used our default storage template, and I had to like pry the security off with like a million knives to try to get it open to the public. So then of course I could do a security demo with it. It was really impressive. Classify your data and label it so that people know what security procedures to do if something happens. Hey Kim, can you mute yourself?
I worked on
the
audio on my end so much that I'm
Okay.
afraid if I change everything, it'll mess everything up.
Okay, cool. That's cool. That's okay. But if you don't classify your data and label it, me as an incident responder, when I come in, I have to act as though the worst possible thing is happening because I don't know. I don't know if that information is secret or classified or whatever you want to call it in your organization. It sucks. I have like lots of gray hairs from unclassified data. Monitor access, monitor file integrity, monitor port sniffing, monitor every single thing you can about your storage containers with alerts and automated responses. So human beings shouldn't be going into your containers. Computers using service accounts should be going in. So if you see Tanya's account, there's probably something wrong, and you should probably tell those nice people down in the Security Operations Center what's happening. And the last one is only use service accounts. Don't use your own personal account to access these things. If my app stores things in a container, then my app should use its service account to talk to it. It shouldn't be Tanya's account. So if Tanya gets a new job, if Tanya becomes evil Tanya, these are risks that you could have with my personal account going into it, right? But if you have a service account, you're okay. Next, containers and orchestration. I'm having another sip of water. Also known as Diet Coke. Okay, so containers, let me go back a little bit, even though we totally don't have time. So we used to have giant servers, huge machines, and it would run one application on it, one operating system. And then some really brilliant people created virtualization, meaning you could have a whole bunch of different operating systems running different apps on the same physical machine. And that was awesome sauce. Then we came up with containers. And containers, they don't have the whole operating system. They just have the little tiny pieces that you need to run your app. And so imagine, like if you wanted to run Windows Server 2012, that is like 2 gigs of RAM and 2 gigs of hard drive space. That's gigantor. So you could maybe only put 4 virtual machines on one server. But with a container, if you just take the little parts that you need, instead what you have is maybe 4 megs of RAM and 2 megs of hard drive space. And that means you can have hundreds of containers on the same server instead of just 4 or 6 or 8. And so containers are just so tiny, and you can start them and stop them quicker because they're just so much smaller. But because there's so many containers, that led to orchestration. So orchestration manages all the containers. And they'll do things like stop, start containers, add more memory, take memory away, destroy them, figure out who has access, etc. So orchestration is the management of all the containers, and containers are itty bitty, teeny tiny operating systems that run just what you need to run your app or script. Okay, so now we're experts, right? Now we know. So just like all the other things that I said previously, you still have to follow the same security best practices that you would have. So you still need to follow the same cloud security practices with containers. Like, they still need to trust no one. They still need to have authentication and authorization. You still need to protect them in all the same ways that you normally would, right? So, but there's new things because containers are different. So there's new types of configurations that you're going to need to learn, and there's new tools that you are going to need to learn to scan the containers. So you usually use a different tool to scan a virtual machine versus a container. There are some that overlap, but usually there's different versions. There's new types of vulnerabilities to watch out for. So just like a virtual machine, everyone wants to try to break out of a container. But on top of that, a new specific type of vulnerability is specifically that people are going to try to attack your orchestration system and figure out if they can get the power to manage the containers. That is a very high value target, so you want to protect that quite carefully. But it's kind of the same as virtual machines. So scan everything that can be scanned, verify your configs are following best practices, patch or replace with newer versions regularly, and apply zero trust to all your designs. I know I make it sound simple. It's actually really hard. But if you follow these practices, your life will be better because you'll have less security incidents. Okay, so there's slightly more I want to add. So do not run your containers as root. Don't do it. I know that when you're a developer, you're like, oh, it's so much easier if I'm just root. I'm like, no, that makes it so much easier if you're a malicious actor, if it's run as root. Don't run as root. There's never a reason. There just isn't. Limit resources. So set quotas for things to make sure, one, you don't get a giant cloud bill that you weren't expecting that makes you cry, and two, that like there isn't something malicious happening. Put multi-factor authentication on all your management accounts. This applies to every single thing in your life. If it is an important account, put MFA on it. I follow this woman on Twitter, Jessie Irwin. She's so awesome. And she has this thing, like, she calls it 2-Raptor authentication. She's like, if you like it, then you should put some MFA on it. And I'm like, yes, yes. Just like Beyonce, she's right. So you should secure your container registries. So if you have a registry where you're getting containers from, it cannot be just Docker Hub on the internet. Like anyone can put stuff on there, even people that aren't nice. So you should be very careful as to who can put something into your container registry, and you should block the ability of your developers to take things from Docker Hub. Like if you're playing around on your own computer in a sandbox at home, fill your boots. But if you are at work, no Docker Hub for you, I'm sorry. And yeah, don't download untrusted containers. So again, no Docker Hub. I use Docker Hub for fun for my open source project. I don't use it for work. Okay, I'm gonna have another sip and let that digest for you, because that's a lot of information. APIs and microservices. Same AppSec best practices. You still need to input your, validate your input. You still need to do secure coding, all these things. So all the same stuff you would normally do apply to an API and a microservice. So an API, so microservice is just a really small API, and an API is a web app with no front end. There's just no front end. So it's all the back end stuff, and it's called from other apps or other APIs. And that's it. So the only thing in secure coding that does not apply to an API is output encoding, because you don't output to a screen. That's the only thing you can skip. And APIs, again, and microservices are basically the same thing. Microservices are just itty bitty teeny tiny APIs. So all the secure coding that you learned, you still got to do it except output encoding. Okay, so what's new? There's more, right? You can use something called a service mesh. A service mesh is a layer of infrastructure that goes over your APIs. You don't have to change any of your code, so that's awesome. And it encrypts everything end to end. Yes, you don't have to do it. And it manages authentication and authorization. Yes, you don't have to do it. That is awesome sauce. It can start APIs, stop APIs, etc. It's basically like orchestration for containers. Service Mesh does for APIs. Awesome. I believe in templating and standardization. Like I said before, don't make people reinvent the rule. So make sure that they can just grab a template and start with that so everyone starts at the same place for your organization. I'm a big fan of linting. So that is sort of like the grammar police, but for your code. And so it makes sure that you are strictly following the protocol and definition of the API. There's no poetic licensing allowed. Vulnerabilities sometimes live in poetic licensing. I suggest, I demand, I request, I advise throttling and resource quotas for APIs, which can be done via an API gateway. Basically, throttling means slowing people down as they keep making requests. And resource quotas means you've hit this number, you're cut off. It's mostly to protect you against bots, or what sometimes people call API abuse. But basically, you don't want bots using up all of your resources so that your real customers can't use them. It's really important you authenticate and then you authorize. This goes for everything, but authentication means figuring out who you're talking to, and they are someone you know. And then authorizing means figuring out which access they are allowed and then giving it to them. So I want to make sure, for instance, it's the real Kim Crawley and it's not some other Kim, right? And then I'm like, oh, Kim's awesome. She's totally allowed to have my phone number. I authorize her to have it.
Well, the real Kim Crawley, please stand up. Please stand up.
Yeah.
Please stand up.
Exactly. You don't just give your phone number to any Kim. So another thing you want to do is you want to hide all the information you can in your error messages. Computers don't make typos. Humans and attackers make typos. So if someone makes a bad call to your API, it's probably malicious. So don't tell them how to fix it. Don't say, oh, well, you missed this. Don't give them more information. And also you should trigger an alert. And the last one is for every app ever, but I've decided to mention it here, is you should only have HTTP verbs that you actually use and like as part of your code. And then you should block every other HTTP verb, sometimes called HTTP methods. So for instance, get and post, people use those a lot. People don't use trace or head or put as often. So if you're not using them, block them. Because I can tell you as a pen tester, I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna call everything I can. So block the rest. Okay, so I'm seeing we only have like 11 minutes left, and I have so much more to say. So,
you have 5 minutes left.
I have 5 minutes left. Okay, so I am going to put these on the screen, but I'm not able to cover all the different modern tooling, unfortunately, because it just goes on and on and on. There's a lot. So instead, because if I went through all of these, like I could talk to you for an hour. So I'm going to go to the automation part of the presentation. So automate the boring stuff. We learn to code so that life could be more fun, so things could be faster, but also so we could avoid boredom and toil. So my previous colleague, Steve Morawski, who's really awesome, made this slide. So we want to avoid toil. Toil is manual work, repetitive work, automatable, tactical. It's work that you can automate, and it's work that is not fun or interesting to do. This is why computers are awesome. So we can do DevSecOps. So we can create a pipeline that automatically runs a bunch of our security tools. We can create a second pipeline that runs really in-depth weird stuff that would slow everyone else down. We can do SecOps, so we can automate security checks of operations activities. We can do security as code, so we can actually program in the security features to the infrastructure as code. There's like so many different ways that we can automate things and make our lives faster, better, and quite frankly, more accurate. When we automate things, we end up having proactive work. So we can prevent incidents instead of dealing with incidents. We can upgrade our security features instead of just constantly scrambling. We have less time cleaning up messes and more time doing awesome stuff. Okay, so the last item on this talk today is continuous learning. Every moment is a teaching moment when you work in security. If a mistake has happened, that means there's a thing we need to learn. So the moment we stop giving time and prioritizing learning, we fall behind. Even if something bad happens or something good happens, you still might be able to make a good lesson out of it. You can do micro lessons, lunch and learns, computer-based training, try a whole bunch of things and see which works the best, and then invest a lot of your time there. Developers and operations folks are going to continue to bring in new tech, whether we want them to or not. And if we aren't there with them, they will go around us. I assure you, where you work, some people are already going around you if you're security. You can create a learning calendar block where every week you have like this hour or 2 hours blocked off where you're supposed to do self-training. That has worked well for me. You can do job shadowing, mentoring, on-the-job training. You can share information informally with other teams. So if something awesome happens, or if something not awesome happens, you can share it. You can take metrics from all your different tools and then design training based on that. So you solve the problems that you see the most often. You can build your own training. And I have a story, but I don't have time to tell it. But basically, someone thought I invented DevOps because they saw one of my talks and had not been on training in over a decade and never had heard of DevOps. And don't get me wrong, it's so cool that there's this one person that thinks I'm a god, but you can't stop learning or you'll be like that guy. So conclusion. I am very tired of people thinking of a guy in a hoodie when they think of our industry. This is a picture of my friend Steph. She is one of the leaders for WOSEC, Women of Security. She's the leader for the Houston chapter. She is what a hacker looks like. I am what a hacker looks like. Kim is what a hacker looks like. And if you look in the mirror, that is what a hacker looks like. And I think we need to change our representation so that everyone feels like they can join our industry, because quite frankly, we cannot do this without them. We need all hands on deck. Okay, last rant. Please be nice to developers. They are our friends. We need them. We need all of IT to be our allies. We cannot blame them anymore. We need to work with them together and take responsibility with them. So that's the end of my conclusion and rant. I'm going to give you a couple of free resources and then I will be done. So if you are a person that has a power to take screenshots, please consider taking some screenshots of these. So first of all, OWASP. There are over 300 chapters around the world. I love my chapter. Maybe you'll love yours. There's awesome projects online. You can check out owasp.org on the internet. WOSEC, Women of Security. We have 32 chapters all around the world, and we just got our first website. So we're womenofsecurity.com. Please come visit us. And on Twitter, please check out Cyber Mentoring Monday every Monday. Check out that hashtag so that you can potentially find a professional mentor or become one. And lastly, I am a resource. Follow me. I do all the things. I YouTube and I Twitch and I DevTow and I do all the things. Please consider following me. I share a lot of free stuff. I'd love to share it with you. And lastly, what have we learned today? We have learned that Purple Team is collaboration, and that we have to adopt modern tools and practices if we want to win, because we want to win. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. Please feel free to check the link at the top of these slides. I'll share it in the chat because the slides are already up on the internet. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but if not, maybe on social media, ask me questions. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you.
You did an absolutely stellar job. And for the people who, we already have the winners of the free She Hacks Purple application security courses. But if you weren't one of the lucky winners, the $7 a month that I spend on your service is well worth it.
Thank you.
So
thank
I
you.
recommend them to everyone. I don't know all the things that you do. I have no idea how you do all of that simultaneously. You've got like a clone factory with like a dozen of you.
I know we don't even publicize all the things. It's somewhat silly, but thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing this conference. I feel like it's really important. Please send me the contact information for the winners so I can set them up.
Yeah, I will. One last mention. I did mention that the book that I've worked on with Phil Wiley will be published by Wiley. Tanya is also working on a book with Wiley.
Yeah, I actually just submitted my last chapter of Alice and Bob Learn Application Security.
We're both at the same point.
Yes. I still have lots of edits though, and you're probably a lot better at edits than I am because you're actually a professional writer. So yeah.
I will buy your book.
And I'll buy yours.
There we go. Phil will be happy to hear that too. So next up, I'm gonna kick you out.
Yep. Bye everyone. Thank you.